David has over 20 years experience using GIS for research, advocacy, education, and outreach. In 2008, with support from the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, he developed the Pine Ridge Strategic Land Planning Map Book, a printed resource for members of the Pine Ridge Reservation to locate their lands and understand the various land management options available to them. Excuse me. A few years later, he developed the Pine Ridge Land Information System, an online interactive mapping system for the Pine Ridge Reservation that includes current land tract maps, reservation and district boundaries, prime agricultural lands, county fee land information, and other tribal, state, and federal government boundaries. It also includes historical maps, including the original allotment maps for Pine Ridge, the different historical treaty boundaries and historical maps of South Dakota, as well as links at the section level at the BLM GLO land patent database. David is currently working on a national database of various land covers and prime agricultural land classifications for all Native American lands in the coterminous United States, which he plans to make available to tribes in the spring of 2019. Welcome.
Cool. Thank you. Pull this thing out. Okay, so thank you for that introduction. And thank you for having me here. I haven't been to one of these conferences maybe in about 5 years or so. And at that time I was presenting on a map book, which was sort of the previous evolution of the mapping system. And so before I start, I wanted to do a little bit of introduction into the whole, what led us up to this approach to getting information out and the whole rationale behind it, because we're not, like he mentioned, we're not a land office or we don't represent a tribe necessarily. We're an independent nonprofit. Of course, in creating this, we partnered with the Oglala Sioux Land Office, so they were a huge help, and it wouldn't have been possible without them. So it was a good partnership in that. But mostly, we're an advocacy organization, primarily focused on tribal landowners. And I would say, that's been my number one focus over the last 20 or so years. I got my start working on the Pine Ridge Reservation as a graduate student. And one of the first things that I did when I was up there was working on a needs assessment. And in that needs assessment, it lasted 5 years, and we would go back to the same houses every year. And every year we'd add 60 more houses. So by the end, we had talked to some 400 different households on the reservation. And it was a whole host of, we had, prior to putting this needs assessment together, we had talked to different agencies around the reservation and got what they wanted, both tribal agencies and also independent nonprofit, native-run organizations. And we added their questions onto our survey. And so one issue that really stood out for me was land. And in particular, how a lot of people said that they owned land. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. They owned significant tracts of lands, 400 acres, 500 acres, sometimes more than that. And what was startling to me as an outsider was just how little access they had to that. In fact, how little knowledge they had of those lands. That we would ask, well, do you know where those lands are located? And a lot of times they would have to dig out their trust interest report and just, mostly what they knew about their lands was the number and how many acres and how much they got as lease revenue from that land. And so that kind of led into a project that we got funding from the Indian Land Tenure Foundation for, to create a map book. At that time, it was about, 2007. And while online land information systems were around at the time, they were still not quite accessible. I don't know any programming, so we are going to, in this workshop, create a basic land information system, and there will be no programming involved, so don't worry about that. And so that was my limitation. And so initially we created a map book using ArcGIS and a map book plugin. And basically what a map book does is it takes, a huge amount of information and slices it up into pages. And then one of the key features of that is the ability to create an index. So your index will tell you what page of any particular feature is. If it's a road, if it's a house, if it's a parcel, and you can create that index and make it easily searchable. So in the back of it, you can look in there and see, parcel 2560 is on page 56, and you can turn to that page, just like a gazetteer like used for the roads. So that was our initial project. So here's that map book. And the whole idea here was, this was not an end in itself. One thing that stood out was that a lot of people are saying, well, I want to live on my land. I want to utilize my land. If I can, I'd like to, we actually added that to our survey, and over 70% of people said that if they could, they'd like to live on and utilize their land, either farming or ranching or start a business on it. Whereas a lot of people were living in housing projects while their lands were being leased out to non-tribal members. And so that was sort of the fundamental obstacle or the fundamental contradiction that we were trying to address was, how do we build that connection to the land and facilitate that? And so at the same time, we were also working with families who were trying to utilize their land. So we're trying to make those initial steps in getting their lands out of the leasing system, possibly putting up fences, consolidation, whatever it took to bring their lands together and use it. And so, the very first obstacle in that process we identified was just, where are my lands? Where are they located? What resources do we have? And so that's what this map book was attempting to address, was making that first kind of, I see it as a psychological connection. Because what this land tenure system has done over the years is disconnect people from those original allotments and dehumanize them in a sense where all people know is a number. And that's how bureaucracies dehumanize things, is they assign it a number. And then that's all you know. You lose connection to that allotment, and all you know is a number, and you know how many acres, and that's it. And so we wanted to make that first bridge of connection to where people could now, at least turn that number into a geographic location and identify where on the reservation that land was located. And then from there, you can take the next step and, well, let's drive out there. Let's check it out. Let's see what's on it. Just in here we had aerial photos, and you could, at least get some initial idea of where it's located and where it, is it being used for farming? Is it within a range unit? But the map book has a lot of limitations. It's not, we're all familiar with like Google Maps or MapQuest, where you can go to a location and you can zoom in and out and you can really see detail about what's going on there. You can turn on and off layers. A book is really limited in the amount of layers you can put in there. If you add too many layers, it becomes too confusing. And so it's really hard to make it simple enough to use, to usable, but also have the information that people want, while also not making it, 500 pages long. So all those limitations are erased when you turn that into an online mapping system. You can have a huge amount of data in there. You can have layers that people can turn on and off. You can have, you can even do searching. So rather than having to go into the back of an index to find your tract ID number, now you can just enter it into a search form, and then the system zooms right into it. So that was kind of our whole approach here, was really trying to make that first connection into where are my lands. And then in that same book, we have instructions. In fact, we worked on a whole series for the message runner that grew out of this project. And in here we had step-by-step instructions how to do things like land consolidation or gift deeds. What are the steps? What is it? We had the actual applications in the back of it. So you can print out, or you can actually see here's the information I need to do a land exchange, to do a gift deed, to withdraw it from the leasing system. So we tried to put all that information there just to make it as easy as possible to know, okay, here's my land and here's the options I have for managing it. So I've got this brief video. It's only a few minutes, but it talks about so out of this project, we did a number of land planning workshops with those books. So we organized them on each district of the reservation, and people came out, they got a book, one of the map books, and then we showed them how to use it, and generally just got feedback. And since then, we've made several iterations of it based on the feedback from these workshops. But this just gives you an idea about what this book was trying to address.
I own 52 acres that I inherited from my mother's side, but it's an airship land, you know, and there's a whole lot of us that own it, you know, maybe a little acre here, acre there, you know, and there you can't do anything with that, you know, and then because of the BIA and the government, we cannot be, although it belongs to us, we cannot profit off of that land as landowners. And that's the way the rules were written by the government. And who is to prosper? The farmers and the ranchers who are leasing our land. And that's the way it was programmed. You know, so we can't go and live on that land unless we ask permission.
And the better part of this whole reservation is run by the Cattleman Association. Okay? So it can't do nothing. This tribal land, they call this tribal land, they're your land, my land, it's all our land. We could do anything we want to. See? But they said we have to get a permit, a lease. You know. We don't need no lease. 1889 Act says they put us on this reservation to live, hunt, fish, free. As long as the grass grows and the river flows, they said. But now they see grazing, and now they see the ore. They see something under the earth.
And how many people do you have living here?
100. Well, I've got, right now, my son and his girlfriend, and I, and 4 kids. So that'd be 8 of us, but my other son came back with 4 of his kids.
And how many bedrooms are there?
Only 3 bedroom. They're all occupied, so they sleep in the living room or down the basement like he is sleeping down.
And if you could live anywhere, where would you live? How would you?
I would live out in the country on my own land or somewhere out in the country.
Church was still the foundation of our activities throughout the and what you need to do is 2 things: is government recognition and capital or financing for economic development to use your lands. Because they got land, they can make things happen, but they don't have the capital to do it.
We're sitting here talking about utilization of our land, but we can't even set our own lease. And then outside they pay $32 an acre. Are they making an agreement with that person leasing it? Where you become kind of, you get income. But we have the people leasing the land who own all the equipment, all the cows, all the rent, all the barns, all the houses, and the person that owns the land has nothing.
Some of our own members, it's like attending a different world because they use acronyms. You know, they speak in acronyms, and their perception is when they speak in acronyms, they cause a state of confusion for tribal members, and they think that's power. I used to mention that to some of the key people in there. I said, "You guys speak in foreign tongue. You're creating your own language and creating confusion for the rest of the people." Well, they didn't like that. I said, "What you should be doing is creating a manual a glossary and defining each acronym you use so that these people can read it and they can understand what you're saying.
And so things aren't really getting done. People go to Pine Ridge to get things done, and it's just like they're turned away because of the hostility of the employees, even though they're tribal members. You know, they tend to think they're privileged. You know, and that's part of the process of what the government does is to give certain people powers, certain things so they feel that they're privileged, even though they probably don't even have any land. You know, so they feel privileged, and they really put down a lot of our people that go there, especially those that are fluent in English but probably cannot defend themselves or stand up for themselves in English.
It's like the BIA workers with the land. They sit up there. Some of them are Lakota people that sit in that whole BIA complex there. And if they had Lakota and they had, of course they have all the equipment and they have access to information, they should compile it and just make something like this. Heck, it took an outsider to come in and do that for them because they don't care. And I don't know how long we're going to have to endure them people sitting there, you know, how much longer.
When I started working with the land office, that they really did have a big interest in getting that information out and supporting the people. And there was really a communication disconnect that I found. That when we presented this project to the land office, they were enthusiastic about us getting that information out. And I think it was more about just them being so burdened with their current tasks that they really didn't have the time to do these sorts of things. They're already under-resourced and understaffed. And so, helping them with that, making that bridge was vital. And personally, I think this kind of information is really at the root of problems like fractionation and, probate, creating wills, because right now people don't think about their lands. They don't think about what's going to happen every generation, because all it is a number right now for a lot of people, not for everybody. But if we can strengthen those connections to the land, then to their original allotments, then that can help people think about the next generation and what they can do to stop fractionation and keep those lands intact for their relatives. So the next evolution of this was really the online land information system. So what is a land information system? The Wikipedia definition. A land information system is a geographic information system for cadastral and land use mapping, typically used by local governments. This is actually something that, most county governments, or at least some of the larger county governments in the U.S., have land information systems. So where I come from in Larimer County, we can go on there and I can type in my name. In fact, they actually have I can type in my name or address and it'll tell you what person owns that land, how much the value of that land is, my yearly taxes for it. All that information is accessible online. And that's pretty common in some of the larger counties in the U.S. And at the very least, a lot of the smaller counties publish plat maps, which I'm just amazed at how, for part of this project, I ordered plat maps for all the counties on the Pine Ridge Reservation, which I digitized and put into our land information system. And each of those maps cost $100. And it's very easy just to export that and put it in an online system and save people the cost of doing that, of spending that money. And it's way more accessible. You don't have to pay for printing costs. You don't have to wait a month for it to be printed and shipped to you. All that can be made available. So, and I'm going to show you how to do that with a printed map like that. So before this workshop, I did a search out there to see what tribes are using land information systems. Just a brief poll in here. How many of you have developed a land information system, or how many tribes out there have one? Awesome. So they are being used, and with more frequency for sure. But really, I think the biggest problem is people not knowing what it takes to create them. That they don't realize how easy it actually is and how easy it is to make that information public. So here, the Agua Caliente Band, they have a basic land information system which has an address locator and a land status maps. The Confederated Tribes of Umatilla Indian Reservation, they have a pretty detailed one where they have online or non-tribal upland hunting maps. So this makes it easier for outsiders to come in and know which lands are available for hunting. And I'm sure those areas change from year to year, so this makes it easy to update those maps and get them out. It has a climate data viewer. It has a Birch Creek watershed action plan. So planning data or planning information, it's a way to get that information out to people, get feedback even. River restoration on the Walla Walla Basin, road ownership, surface water temperature monitoring. So there's no end to the kinds of data that you can add to a land information system. And like I said before, it makes it very easy to put multiple layers on there and not have it be a burden. That was always the challenge we had with the printed map book. So the Yurok tribe, they have the reservation boundary, community maps, allotments, addresses, townships, sections, counties, roads, forests, ancestral territory, ownership, counties. So a lot of information. And then the Pine Ridge Land Information System. This is the mapping system we've been developing to and adding to over the years. Let me just get to that. So I'll give you a little demonstration here. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can embed a mapping system into your website, or you can just create a hyperlink to an existing, which is what I've done here, primarily because it gives you more space, more room to put information when it's not embedded on your site. So a pretty common feature of a land information system is to have a nice disclaimer in the front that people shouldn't be using this information for legal purposes. So you can protect yourself in that way. So when you first come on here, let me change the base map. So it makes it very easy to change base maps as well. You can see it a little better on a screen like that if it's a... So you can turn on high resolution aerial imagery. You can put roads, elevation maps, a whole host of different. So here's the Pine Ridge Reservation with the various districts. You can turn on the parcel layer. And this was, putting the parcel layer online is a huge asset to people. And I would say for the land office, at least for the Pine Ridge Land Office, this is what has saved them the most time, because they have people coming in all the time asking for a map of their land. And so what this does is it allows you to go in, anybody can get online, get the tract ID from their trust interest report, enter it in online, and zoom right to it. So I'll give you an example. So let's go to 4658. Oh. 46. And so it gives you search suggestions, kind of like Google does. And here you can see the tract ID, and then we've also merged with this the original allottee. So this isn't the current landowner, it's the original allottee from early 1900s, about 1920 or so, between 1904 and 1920. So if you click on that, it zooms right to that parcel. And from there, you know, psychologically, I think that's really the first step, is that, wow, I've turned my number, that all I've known all these years is a number, and now I know where that parcel is. I can actually drive out there and check it out. I can see what's going on. Or I can turn on satellite image. I can see from here, okay, it's in some farmland. We've added some other layers, so I can go in here. I can turn on, I can see if it's in one of the range units. So this is a layer called the agricultural capability, and this is put out by the NRCS, and what they do is they map prime agriculture lands. Yeah? Yeah.
But the original isn't?
No, because it's so old.
Okay.
I don't think the Privacy Act covers people that have passed away. Is that, any corrections on that? So yeah, did everybody hear that question, by the way? Okay. So yeah, you cannot put personally identifiable information. I don't know how that translates. So for example, in my county, in Larimer County, Colorado, all of our names, any landowner, their names are online and their addresses and how many taxes, how much I paid for my house in my taxes, or at least the value of the house, the appraised value. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing along those lines about who would have access to this map and all this parcel data information, the county, anybody since it's online, or?
Yeah.
Because of that confidentiality issue, I know I'm with Umatilla Tribes, Patty Perry. I know with the maps that we do have, we don't have that information on it. We have the general, but not the actual allotment numbers and that kind of thing because of that.
Yeah. The actual boundaries shouldn't be protected by the Privacy Act, just the ownership names, but I don't even know if that is the case because, like I said, in fact, the county plat maps, which I'll show you in a little bit, those have the names of the landowners.
But all the county information is public.
Yeah.
And all the county information is public, but the reservation and trust land information is confidential. And I mean, in our county, in our situation, the county doesn't even know what's within, they just call them large tax lots, but within those tax lots are all these allotments.
Yeah.
And they don't even know where they are, what their configurations are. And putting all of this online would just kind of put that out there. And I don't know. I don't know personally how all the rules about that, but it's through our agency and the LTRO in our area that tells us what we can do and can't.
I anticipated this question. So here's CFR 25-150-11A. The usefulness of Land Titles and Records Office depends in large measure on the ability of the public to consult the records contained therein. It is therefore the policy of the Bureau of Indian Affairs to allow access to land records and title documents unless such access would violate the Privacy Act or other laws restricting access to such records, or there are strong policy grounds for denying access where such access is not required by the Freedom of Information Act. So I don't see any reason, the published, at least in every CAP office on Pine Ridge, they print out all the parcel maps. So I think you need to weigh the benefit of getting that making that information accessible to your tribal members versus possible negative uses. In the time that we've had this up, we haven't had any negative feedback in that sense or negative implications from it. And but we've had a lot of people praise us for how, wow, now I can find out where my lands are at. So I wouldn't recommend putting landowners' names on there, but historical data you can. That information's open to the public. And
yeah, I think that's a concern that we share. Ho-Chunk Nation. We have GIS applications. We have multiple ones. You know, we got one that we send out for hunting, just showing the hunting lands that are publicly available or exclusive to tribal members. And then we have one where it just shows lots that are available for leasing on Ho-Chunk Nation property. But we also have kind of like a master application that has all this and the parcels and the zoning and all these other layers. You know, they can do, the GIS people, there's so much, it's like limitless on what they can do. There's so much they can do. But our concern was making this type of information public because to me it's strategical in the fact that, you know, you have nearby landowners, and it's not most of the time with us it's the state, but there are some private owners out there that could take advantage of, say, like, oh, well, it looks like you're building a community in this area, or it looks like they're expanding infrastructure in this area, and this parcel is kind of would be a strategic parcel to acquire and run up the price on if I were to acquire it. So you're putting information out there for individuals, or it might be a 1/1 owner that are tribal trust properties that the tribe or the individual might want to invest in. And, you know, the nearby fee property owners and outside fee owners, non-Indian owners, now have that information that, like the lady up front said, wasn't publicly available previously.
yeah.
So I'm all for getting information to tribal members, property owners. They should have every right to look at their TAMS reports and all their information, whatever we can provide them. But at the same time, you're opening yourself up and the public up to a lot of information that wasn't previously accessible for them. And I work with land acquisitions, so to me, it would be more information for me to know, like, okay, who are my nearby landowners? What do they own? What are these parcels exactly? Whereas previously, they didn't even know the dimensions or the aliquot parts or the meets and bounds of our parcels.
Yeah.
You know, but now that this is publicly available, not just them, but everyone, you know, some SMO out in town, because our parcels aren't, at least ours, and I know a lot of tribes there's a lot of checkerboard here, and preferably the tribes, we're looking to get rid of that checkerboard. We don't like that checkerboard, neither do the counties. No one likes the checkerboarding. But if I have an individual that can purchase these 40 acre or 120 acre plots in the checkerboard, to them now that they can just sit on these properties and leave them undeveloped, low taxes, apply for some state funding or grant stuff for forestry, and you know they can just hold on to it and then jack the price up when the tribe comes to purchase.
Yeah.
You know, if it's only a 180 acre parcel and we're looking to close that checkerboard up, now, let me buy out this guy. He ain't doing anything. He's leasing it out to an ag farmer or something.
Yeah.
And now I own that, and now I know the benefit. The tribe's eventually going to come for this.
Yeah.
Because it's within their reservation boundary. You know, so
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just my take on it.
Now, in regards to the fee lands, that information is already publicly available because you can go to the county assessor's office and get a map of all the fee land in that county. Yeah.
Parcel information is open to the public.
Yeah.
So But when it comes down to the tribal lands, all the allotted information, if you click on a parcel, it'll say which tribe owns which parcel, right? Except for the fee lands, which is inside the
Yeah.
reservation. But the way we've gotten around it is instead of using ArcGIS Online to make one of these, we've used Portal. So we do have our in-house tribal council viewing this stuff, and membership could use it too. That would be open for them. But it has all the allottee information, it's just like what you have,
Sure.
their interests and all that whatnot. But it's not open to the public. Public can't view it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
just
and
a
you
different
can-
way to view it.
There's a whole range of access you can create.
Yeah.
You can create, certain levels of access for the public. You can create a password or a login system for tribal members. You can make it so people have to come into the office, or you can make it accessible just in the libraries on your reservation.
Yeah.
So there's you can decide. You can also not publish all the parcels. If you want to keep a certain area, private, you can avoid, just not put them up. So there's a lot of different choices you can make. When we were creating this, we were creating it in partnership with the Oglala Sioux Tribe Land Office, and we had that discussion. We're like, do you want to put this online? Do you want to make it just accessible in the land office? And it was decided that, let's make it available to the public, because that's what the purpose is, to make it available to landowners as easy as possible.
How you did it. I'm the Eastern Region Bureau Indian Land Surveyor, in which anytime GIS, anytime anything is produced in GIS nowadays, and it's becoming more and more popular for managers, it's always my recommendation to go to the tribes and nations and have that discussion that do they want stuff published, and if not, or if so, how much of it do they want published?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I can appreciate the concerns and comments,
Yeah,
and I agree
absolutely.
with the folks in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I had, in fact, I get calls all the time for data from here, and I never respond to those. I always refer them to the land office. I said, well, you're going to have to ask the land office for that data. I can't provide that. So I don't share any of the information that's on here. I leave that to the discretion of the tribe. Uh-huh.
Do you know actually who the owners are of those allotments through that
No.
system?
No. And even the land office, unless they request it, they don't know that information. So I do have, we have the original allotment maps, and this was actually something, so let me turn this ag capability off.
I'd like you to hold that information after you're done with your point. I have a comment about that.
What's that?
Well, for instance, it shows the parcel is in section 3 with 4,658 acres. Either it needs to be listed as being in multiple sections to have that many acres, or the acres are just flat out wrong. And one of the things I've noticed, and I realize the importance of the GIS and the LIS systems. However, I notice a big trend in there's not enough input or review from land surveyors in regards to the accuracies of the information that's being published. And I only hope, and I stress that importance constantly in my region in regards to we really need to have less GIS people per surveyor, or more awareness that somebody needs to be doing reviews for accuracy, because if that got in the hands of an assessor, they'd be like, oh yeah, parcel 4658, I'm going to tax it for 4,658 acres.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm not sure how that, and that's definitely why you want to put, a disclaimer that this is not a legal, this should not be referenced for legal purposes.
True, but I've seen a lot of problems, including guns.
Oh, that's where it's referencing that.
So, but I've also seen problems where people have pulled out guns over disputes because of inaccuracy. So, when this kind of system is being built, extra efforts need to be put into making sure that the information's solid.
Yep. Very good point. So this is the original allotment maps. And so this is something, you know, among grassroots people on Pine Ridge, this is something they've, you know, I've had people say, oh, if you could find the original allotment maps, if you could, you know, because there's this strong desire. In fact, the way people phrase it is, we need to do a land audit. I need to figure out what happened to my land, because I know I was allotted land over here. I know was, you know, my grandparents had land in the bombing range, and you know, there's just this thirst for information that people don't have access to. And so when I showed the superintendent the land information system, he dug this plat book out from the archives and said, okay, you can have it for 24 hours. And we scanned every page of it, geo-referenced it, merged all the images together, and put it up here to make it accessible to people. And so it has the original allottees on there. And then we've added, we've linked this to the BLM patent data. So you can go on there, and it links directly for that. It doesn't go down to it goes to the section, and then from within that section, it'll show you the different patent information. So if you click on that, it opens the original allotment. For that. So this was 1928. Oh wait, 1913. That this was allotted. And so if it was issued a fee patent, it would also show that information. So if that person, and so what we're actually trying to do right now as part of another project is recreate all the fee patenting on Pine Ridge. So we're trying to trace out who was the original allottee, when were they issued a fee patent, why was that fee patent issued, and reconstruct that whole process. Because we've already found information of a court case in Bennett County, where Bennett County was issuing fee patents to people, even though that land hadn't been fully opened up for patenting. And so a lot of people, their lands were liquidated because they weren't able to pay the taxes, and the government was collecting that, reselling the land and collecting that money, and we don't know if those people were ever compensated for that, or if their lands were ever recovered. So we're trying to recreate that whole fee patenting process. And as we're doing this, we're trying to make that information available to the public. Yeah.
On the reservation I work for, there's about 205 original allotment, but when I look at the general land office records online, I can only find about 18 of them. Do you know why that might be?
The original allotments, then you can only find
18 of the patents or information about the patents on that website. I can only find 18 out of the 205 or so.
So yeah, the BLM publishes on the website how much, you know, what percentage or how many patents they've published, and they're not all up yet. So I think it's kind of a work.
Correct.
It's a huge database, terabytes of information. It's an amazing resource.
And new surveys, they'll get the plats on that site quickly, but a lot of times the notes take years to catch up.
Yeah, it does. This database also has the original plat maps, like you said, and the surveyor notes. And in some cases, it even describes some of the ecological conditions, like if it was forested or if it was grassland. It'll have some written notes, and people have used those written notes to reconstruct what the ecology was like at the time when that was originally surveyed.
I'd say a good place for the documents you're looking for, you're either going to have to go to LTRO, that's the first place I'd go to. your local whatever land title records office you are under, and you can request. They're probably going to be looking for the track numbers. If you can have the track numbers for each and every one of those, they might be able to get you those original homestead certificates. Usually a lot of those, like this is one of the first ones I've seen that were not handwritten. Most of those are like handwritten ones, and some of them are barely legible. The other place I'd go to, which we had to do back in the 80s and 90s, was we actually went to the county courthouses and we requested copies. You'd have to dig through the old volume and real numbers if you have the parcel number. Usually it goes off of the quarter quarters. Once you know the PLSS, the section, township, range, and quarter of those, it helps them find exactly what you're looking for. But the local register of deeds should have copies, and you might be able to get certified copies of those original homestead certificates. That's what we had to do for a few of them, because TAMS, the BIA system, doesn't even always have those original Lati homestead certificates scanned in, or they just have a record of them, a paper record written down on a handwritten sheet. They might not even have an image of it. So that's something to consider. Or it might be in their repository in Virginia or wherever that's at, that you might have to go and track down.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I think it's the number at top, the 123189 number. If you go to the National Archives, you can find the original correspondence between the BIA and the local superintendent on why that land was, if it was a fee patent or why it was allotted. So the original discussions, or you can find the related documents to that patent and find out what was going on related to that. And that's what we're trying to do with the fee lands. And I would encourage everybody to do that with fee lands, to reconstruct how that process happened. Because we're already, like I said, I found this court case, but I can't find any related documents. So I'm going to go to the National Archives and try to figure out which parcels were illegally patented, and were those landowners ever compensated for that? So I can't even find what the outcome of that case was. All I found was a newspaper article referring to it that said that it was in a federal court, and that the court ordered them to return whatever money they had collected. And at that time, the Bennett County was trying to say that, well, we've already dispersed the money to the state and it's already gone and we can't. So I don't know where it's at, but I think this is part of the process of getting that, uncovering that information and making it accessible to people so they can do their own audit, in a sense. Once people start investigating their land and researching it, start to reconnect that whole chain of title. So you can also add, so we put another issue people had was, what parcels were included in the Badlands bombing range. So this was a bombing range created in World War II, and people were paid, I think, 40 cents an acre to evacuate there. And even to this day, it's just filled with unexploded ordnance and no one can utilize it. But so a lot of people are saying, I think I had land. My great-grandmother said she had land there, and so now people can go in and find out exactly who was in that. This 3-mile buffer. So this is part of a Oglala Sioux tribe. They have a 3-mile buffer around some of the larger towns So some of the larger towns to where you can't do land exchanges. So that's part of their regulation for doing land exchanges, that it can't be done within one of those buffers. So just trying to make all that information available, so when you're filling out your land exchange application, you don't have to keep going back and asking for more information and getting all that. You can have all the information right here to do those things on your own. The tribe. Yeah, it's in their regulations. And then we've also put historical treaty boundaries in here. Just as educational resource. I've found archival maps. So anytime I find these maps that the Library of Congress has or anything that's publicly available, I'll digitize it and just add it up there, because it really doesn't take much resources to do that, but it makes it amazingly available to people. And then most recently, we've added the county plats. Turn these off. This was actually something that we've received a lot of good feedback for. Because just like you were saying that there's a lot of interest in potentially outsiders wanting to know what fee lands are available, I would say there's probably more interest in residents of the tribe, or residents of the reservation, knowing who these landowners are and what fee lands are. So the orangish color is trust land, this white is fee land, green is government owned. And these maps, at least for Oglala, Lakota County, this map was available online as a map book. And so in that sense, all we did is slice it up and merge it together, geo-reference it, and put it up on the site. And same with Bennett County over here. This is one I had to pay $100 for, and they shipped it out, and I scanned it and put it up online. And hopefully I did them a service for it. Because even for their own, and in that process, we were able to, the largest landowner in Bennett County is Ted Turner. No one I knew had known that. So these county plat maps actually show the names of the owners. Of course, those change from year to year, but all that information is accessible now. Yeah.
So, like that background is just imagery right there.
Yep.
Whereas the state information you can get is everything that's publicly available on their website. So like all this stuff you're talking about, like taxes and a fair market assessed value and current owner, we do update it annually because ownerships change so much.
Yeah.
But that can be like a parcel that you can click on, just like you can click on your other parcels. That brings up all that information.
Yeah.
So I'd say, I'd hate to say keep going out to your state and your county people, but they have a lot of this information that you, like you're saying, you can use, you can bring to your tribe to say like, hey, this Ted Turner guy owns a lot of property that's contiguous or sometimes within our reservation boundary. Maybe we should look to purchase or you know, it's good information to have, and it's all publicly available. Sometimes you could just download it and just get your GIS guys to throw it on your website.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, believe me, I tried with these counties. If they had that information online and accessible, I would have much preferred to do that. Instead, I ordered the printed maps and just put them up there. So yeah, a lot of time, if they're more organized counties or bigger counties, wealthier counties, then a lot of times they will have information online. They may even have it in a format that you can connect to directly with ArcGIS Online or your mapping system without having to reformat that data. So one thing, the other thing that has been an interest to people is I have a lot of people who've wanted to purchase fee land, tribal members, because you can get on the county assessor website and see a list of tax forfeited land. And those are lands where people haven't paid their taxes, and now they're open for bidding, basically. And that's land within the reservation boundaries that they can get access to. but until those maps were published, they didn't know where to locate them. So now they can just get on the website, see that list of tax forfeited land and say, oh, there it is, right near my community or somewhere where I'd want to have it. What else we got on here? The other thing about using ArcGIS Online is that there's a lot of data, terabytes of data that ArcGIS and other agencies, USDA, USGS, a lot of government agencies publish data online on ArcGIS, and you can, depending on the permissions they've made available, you can incorporate that directly into your land information system. Without all you do is just add that layer from their index. So there's a lot of data like census data, ag data, natural resource, like for example, the public land survey system. That's just pulled in straight from the BLM. Oh, I'm covering it up with my plats. So here you can see it'll show township sections just straight from the BLM. Okay, so before I move into the actual creating a land information system, do we have any questions or comments thus far? So, the first step, how many people know they have access to ArcGIS Online? So it's not necessarily always part of your license agreement with Esri. It may be something you have to add on, although it may be something you're already paying for but not using. And so the way to find out is you go to your licenses, you log into ArcGIS Online, go to licenses, and it's going to show you what you have access to. Oh wait, user types. So go to user types, and right here, so map viewer, app studio, web app builder, those are all the things you're going to need to make a land information system. Sorry. And I apologize, did everybody get, or at least most of you get one of these? This is just the step-by-step instructions on what I'm going to do right now in creating a basic land information system. If you don't have it, and just come up to me afterwards and I can email you a copy. So once you've confirmed you have access, or if you don't have access, just talk to your Esri license administrator and they can set you up. I don't believe it costs a whole lot to have access to it. We have a nonprofit account, so I wish I can't really tell you what you would pay for it. $2,500? Okay, so you can see it's organized into a gallery, which is going to have maps that you've created and maps that other people have created. A map, which is basically like an online GIS. It has pretty much the same functionality. You can add maps, you can add GIS layers, you can add raster layers, you can add vector layers, you can add points. You can connect it to different web services. Your groups, you can determine who has access to the site. So ArcGIS Online can also serve as sort of a basic geodatabase. So if you have a very basic GIS system, or you have even people who aren't really familiar with GIS, GIS Online can be sort of an easy introduction to it. It allows you to add layers, turn off layers. You can restrict people to where they can only view it but not edit certain things. So there's a lot of actual things you can do with ArcGIS Online that you can do in a regular enterprise GIS system. So the map, sort of the most basic element of ArcGIS Online is the My Map. And this is where you add layers, turn on and off layers. You can change base maps. You can actually perform analysis. So you can do a lot of different things. And you got to be careful because they'll charge you for a lot of this analysis, which I learned the hard way. I started a complex network analysis and let it run overnight, and then came back the next morning and found out it had charged up $300. So you got to be careful. It'll tell you how many credits it's going to use before you run it. Fortunately, they refunded me part of that. So yeah, it can analyze between layers. You can filter, you can sort, you can do all sorts of things you can do with a regular GIS. But in this case, we're going to make information available to the public. So to do that, I like to go and you can add it directly into your My Map, but you can also, I like to add the layers first into the content area. And the content is just kind of like your file system within ArcGIS. You can create folders, and you can add them to those folders. So I created a little demo folder for this workshop. And so what I'm going to add here is a parcel layer, a boundary layer, and if we have time, I'll do a tile layer. Just to show you how easy this is. ArcGIS Online will import shapefiles, but you have to zip them up first. As you know, shapefiles have numerous separate files as part of it, and so you can't upload them individually. You have to first zip it up. So to pull in that zip file, oh shoot, that's right. I'm on a different computer. Let me go to one I have already here. So I forgot I'm using their laptop here, and I don't have the files directly on it, but all the files are on here. So essentially what you do is you import, you go to your own file directory, you choose the zip file, and then it's going to give you the option to determine your sharing preferences. So at that point, you can decide, do I want to make this available to everyone, the public? Do I want to make it available to only people within my Esri group that are part of the system already? So you can keep it private. You can also restrict whether people can download that information or not. So they have a lot of different security preferences. So once you've got your data into those folders, you can go to your My Map and add them. So you'll see here it's got search for layers, which is layers within that you've already uploaded. Browse living atlas layers. And the living atlas is sort of ArcGIS's premier. It has a lot of census data, USGS data. These are sort of verified data sources. You can add layer from the web. So if you have a web service or a URL that has that data, or you can do it from a file. So since I've got these already loaded, just find it. Okay, so you can see it came with a default base map, which is just a basic Esri topo map. And so once you've added your layer, then you can style it. Oh. Hold on, that didn't stick. Okay, so there I've got a parcel layer. And I'm going to save as. Oh, you have to add tags, which is just kind of searchable information for that layer. You can add a description also. Okay, so just adding that layer doesn't make it searchable necessarily. So, and doesn't, you could potentially just share this, your My Map. You can make it shareable, but it's not, it doesn't give you many options for formatting it and making it, you know, have your tribal logo or anything like that. So if you go back to content, you can connect your My Map to what's called a web app. And ArcGIS Online has all sorts of web apps for public information, for actually data collection. So you can create maps where people can go in and enter data into it. So if you're doing, you know, if you need public feedback on a planning proposal, you can create an online survey where people can choose, you know, say option A, B, or C. You can have all that feedback right onto that map. People can zoom in and zoom out and see those different options. So to link the map I just created with the parcel layer to a web app, I go create, and then the easiest way to do it is just to use a template they have. So the one I found that's pretty easy for doing land information systems is this public information app. But there's a whole host of different kinds. And so let's call this NTLA demo. And what that web app's going to do, once I've chosen the template, it's going to ask, what map do I want to connect that to? And so that's where I connect it to the parcel layer map that I just created. So there's my map. Now here's where it gives you some options on what you want to call it. Let's call it NTLA demo. You can put a little summary about it. Here's where you can add your splash screen, and this is where a good place to put a disclaimer on there about not using it for legal purposes and options. So this is really the difference between a web app and the basic map, is it gives you all these different options for visibility, for summary information, for customized logos, customized colors. You can really make it blend in directly with, you know, look just like your website. You can choose your default base map, what imagery you want. You can have social media feeds. You can connect it to Instagram or Facebook. And then the search. So this is where, if you want to make that searchable, so it already by default comes with links to Esri World Geocoder, and this makes it possible to search by address. So you can put in a street address if you want. Just for simplicity, I'm just going to have it linked to that land class map. And here, in this case, we're going to have a search by tract ID. So you choose what layer, what field within that. So behind every shapefile, you've got a data table, and within that, you have a number of fields with data in it. So you can search by any of those fields, either numbers or text. Enable suggestions. So this will let you choose let's just say 5 suggestions. Tract ID. So that's just what suggestions come up. What you could have a tract ID and then say the town or whatever you want. You could have another field referenced right here in the display field. And then save. And then once you've done that, launch. And there you have a basic land information system in under 15 minutes. Of course, you can go in, you can style you can add shading, you can adjust the zoom levels of those layers. So you can say, I only want this parcel layer to turn on when I get to zoom level 15 or whatever. So you can choose, there's a whole host of things you can do to make it more visible and more less cluttered looking. You can add labels, you can add, you can change the colors of the labels, you can change the colors of the fill, the lines, just like you can with the desktop GIS. So anyway, with this, it also gives you your sharing options. So, like I said, it'll give you embed code. So you can embed this either as an iframe within an existing website, or you can just link it directly from your site to the land information system, and you can put links going back to your site if you want. So there's a lot of options on how you embed it, depending on the template or how it appears. You can make it just seamless. If you embed it, then it's just a seamless page on your site, so people can, click on a link, they stay on, that your URL stays within there, and they don't feel like they've left your site. So there's some advantages to that. In ours, I chose to have them link directly to the land information system just because it gives you the most options for how much is visible, especially within the web page that I was using. Any questions up to this point? Uh-huh.
This might be of help to some of the people in the room. You can get an app on your phone that will coordinate with your ArcGIS online profile. So when I started in the lands department, I asked for directions to get to a property and was told by natural resources to go until the 40-year-old trees turned into the 80-year-old trees, and that was the property boundary, which made a lot of sense to them, but to me they were just a lot of really tall trees. So I could not find the property boundary myself going out there. After that, I talked to GIS and got our land status map that's confidential to the tribe, but since I have a login to it, I could put it on my phone and it would let me know when I was within so many feet of a boundary. And with that, you can also get collector app, so you can take a picture that geo-references. So again, out in the middle of the forest, not knowing if I'm at the right gate, I can take a picture of the gate on my phone, which geo-references it and puts it on the map so that I can see if I'm at the property boundary and the right gate to access the right property.
Yeah, that's actually a huge resource that anybody who's done surveys of or household interviews or that kind of thing. When we started out doing that survey in 2000 on Pine Ridge, there was no comprehensive list of housing. There was no phone book. There still is no phone book. And the best we had was a list from the energy office that had kind of handwritten notes. And it was just like that. It was like, turn at the gate, go down the road 3 miles. And, to do a survey, a randomized survey like that, that's just not really, doesn't have a lot of accuracy there. So what we did is we created map books. And that's kind of where we first got the map book ideas. We mapped every single household on the reservation using aerial photos, and then put all that into a map book. And in that case, it was a 300-page book. And most of that was the index to say, house number 4820 was on page 30, and in there you had to go in and zoom or look around and be like, oh, there it is, and then you had to figure out, okay, well, where is that on the reservation? But when you have this information in an online format like that, and you can access it from a smartphone or a tablet, that's just a huge resource, because not only is it showing you where that is on the, you can zoom in and zoom out, but it'll show you where you're at. It'll show you, and if you're lucky, it'll give you directions directly to that point. I think the ArcGIS Connector App. So one of the apps in here is the ArcGIS Connector, which links to your ArcGIS Online and allows you to collect data from your phone or from a tablet, a GPS-enabled phone or tablet, and it'll do just that. It'll route you to that point. It'll allow you to collect the data. So all this can be linked together in those online systems. It's just if you do any kind of field data collection like that, it's just a huge, from this experience, we've done census challenges using that same approach, where we map all the households, and then we use a system called Fulcrum, which is a tablet-based data collection, and it allows you to have those maps on there, and you can go in and find the house with an aerial photo, and then enter the data right into it. So all the ArcGIS Online maps are ready for mobile use. That it's going to reformat itself to work in a tablet or a phone. So even people, I know a lot of people I work with on Pine Ridge, that's their internet, is their phone. And so they can access all that information directly from their phone. It's not the best way to do it, because you still have that tiny little screen, but it's better than nothing. It's a huge resource. Any other comments or questions? Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to necessarily pay the $2,500. There's actually a lot of services out there that do have a free point, and usually it limits how many layers you can have or how many fields of data you can have. Yeah, I use QGIS, and I do mostly using open source GIS, and from there there's a plugin for QGIS called Web to Map, and it will take all of your data and squish it into a nice folder that you just upload that whole folder into your website, and boom, you have a web map for free, or at least for the bandwidth of your website. You don't need to break the bank to create one of these. There's a lot of free options. Leaflet Mapmaker is another open source online mapping system, online land information system. So there's a lot of different options. You don't have to go with the most expensive. Any other questions, comments, concerns? As for, I guess I don't have access to the internet, but what I use to do the printed maps are actually, for someone who doesn't do programming or is, somewhat challenged like I am in that department, I found the best tool for doing that is this open source software called MapTiler. It's actually a paid software, but the license for it, which is a perpetual license, once you pay for it once, you own it. It's $129, and MapTiler will allow you to take, basically you can go and scan a printed map, georeference it in ArcGIS or QGIS, and georeferencing, if you're not familiar, that's where you take a map and you add coordinates to it. And it makes it so when you pull that into your mapping system, it lays on the earth where it's supposed to. Lays in the map where it's supposed to. And so once you've done that, you can save it as a TIFF file, import that into MapTiler, and MapTiler will export a nice packaged folder for you that you can upload onto your own website. And so you can host your own map tiles. And so that's how those printed maps work, is levels of tiles, and they pull in the tiles as you're zooming in. That's how they they appear to be seamlessly loaded once you're zooming in and out. And that's I don't pay anything to host that besides my web hosting fee. And I can add it, I can add a map to our website in minutes, depending on how long it takes to georeference it. But that allows, that's how I added those county plat maps, how I added the parcel maps. It's a lot easier to do that than you can pay for. There's services like Mapbox and those sorts of services where they'll serve out your maps to you, your map tiles, but it costs quite a bit of money to do that. So you can host them for free using that map tiler software. And here, the way it links to ArcGIS is you link it as a web service. So the map tiler will give you a link. It'll produce the link for you, and you basically just go into your ArcGIS Online and add a web, it's called a WMTS link, and you put in that URL, and it pulls in your map, and it's being served over from your website. And so you're not paying any hosting fees on ArcGIS Online for that. So that's a huge, if you have, printed maps that you're pulling out all the time and, people are referencing, just throw it up online and give people a URL. And that'll save you, gobs of time in pulling those maps out and helping people. Not only that, you can have it so people can search it. If you link it with that tile layer or with the parcel layer or whatever, or even a PLSS layer, people can enter the section number, they can enter the township range and zoom right to it. So there's a lot of options for, you don't have to put the parcel layer on there, but you can still make this information more accessible. With that, I want to thank you all. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. I can give you a card if you want. I'm very accessible and always interested in helping out and getting these things going. So thank you.